problem number 4. The whole problem is about Boeing's 797 test flight. We're told that Boeing is a company that makes planes. They unveiled their newest airplane, the 797, and we're given a graph with information about that 797's test flight. The key thing to see, the y-axis represents the distance in miles for that flight, and the x-axis represents the time that the plane was flying to travel that distance. We're asked which statements are true and to select all that apply. And before we get into each one of these, if I see a proportional relationship on a graph like this, the first thing I want to do is make sense of the unit rate, or the slope. So we grabbed a few data points on a table up here. The graph is proportional. It starts at 0 and 0. And the first data point we grab, we see right here at 5 hours in, it's a 2,000-mile flight. At 10 hours in, it's a 4,000-mile flight. And that's where these two data points on the table came from. So if we use those data points, we can determine the slope. For example, if we know that from the beginning it goes from 0 to 2,000 miles, that we traveled, or the y value changed by 2,000 miles, and it did those 2,000 miles from 0 to 5 in a total of 5 hours. So our y value increased by 2,000 miles as our x value increased by 5 hours. We do 2,000 miles divided by 5 hours. That simplifies to say 400 miles every 1 hour. So our slope is 400 over 1, and it's really telling us the speed. If I do distance divided by time, and our y values are distance, our x values are time here, distance divided by time will always give you speed. And we see a speed, or a slope, of 400 miles per every 1 hour. That's really the key information you need for all 4 of these parts. Part A says the slope for the graph is 400. Indeed, we just saw why the slope is 400. Part B can't be correct because it provides a different number for slope. And if it's a straight line, the slope remains constant the whole time, 400 miles every 1 hour. Part C says the slope tells us the total miles flown by the 797. Slope is always going to describe unit rate, how two variables change with each other. It's never going to describe just one point in time. So it won't tell us the total miles flown. If you do distance divided by time, however, you do find speed. Here we find 400 miles per every 1 hour. That is indeed telling us the speed for the flight. So here, slope was providing information about the speed, or the miles per every hour of this flight. It says the 797 travels a total of 5,000 miles. We see this graph tops out at 5,000. That doesn't mean the plane is going to stop at 5,000 miles. We have to know how many hours it goes for. The line suggests it's going to keep going for quite a while on this test flight before it reaches its maximum distance. So we don't know the test flight's max distance yet. Part F says if the test flight lasts 15 hours, the 797 travels 6,000 miles. There, I might use an equation, or I might use the fact that 400 miles every 1 hour, and I would say 400 miles per hour. And I would multiply that by the 15 hours that the test flight's going to have. So we'd use some cross multiplication if we think about it in a 7th grade way. If I set up a proportional relationship, 400 miles every 1 hour is equal to how many miles, x, every 15 hours. We'd see we could cross multiply. 400 times 15 does indeed equal 6,000. And that's why F is the 3rd correct answer here.